Dang. Welcome everybody, SharePoint Dev Weekly. This is episode 23. I once again had to actually double check that from the chart, so hopefully that was correct. It is 21st of January 2019. This is already, what is it, third recording this year, so that's pretty decent. Waldek is unfortunately sick. He has a flu, so he needed to bail out, but we have a visitor here. So who are you and what do you actually do, Stefan?
My name is Stefan Bauer. I'm from Austria and live in Vienna, and I'm an information architect here. I run my own company and I do also freelancing stuff. And mostly I do consulting these days, or probably design and less and less development, but I also own the PMP. I'm part of the PMP core team, and I own there the generator, human generator extensibility.
Yep.
I do a lot of coding there.
Yep. So Yeoman basically, so back in almost a year ago, actually, well, we've been having every now and then before, like a year ago already, we were having meetings with Google Angular team, and our objective within the SharePoint engineering was actually get Angular supported natively within the Yeoman generator. Due many reasons, and it's a long-lasting discussion and story, we decided that okay, since the out-of-the-box Yeoman generator is not open source, and that's a long discussion as well. Why isn't it open source? We wanted to actually release a PMP Yeoman generator, which then has a dependency on out-of-the-box one, which will then enable the Angular scenarios and everything else. So this way we can work more freely together with community, and Stefan is leading basically that effort. So Stefan created the original Yeoman generator, the PMP SPFX Yeoman generator, and then we have plenty of contributors on that one as well, right? So yeah. Pavel contributed to Angular.
Alex, Sergeyev.
Yep. Yeah, and plenty of others as well. Yeah. So it's nicely catching some usage. Obviously, people really need to understand that there's no harm using the PMP SPFX Yeoman generator. It is extending the out-of-the-box one. So it is not actually replacing the out-of-the-box one. So then it has a support for Angular elements and what else? What does it actually include?
So we have currently we have handlebars in there, Vue.js, Angular elements, and now in the recent version, in the 1.6, we also extended the React.js and Knockout.js and NoFramework.js generator. Because we have, for example, the Webpack bundle analyzer, which is to use it, it's useful to have it in there for all the generators. Therefore, we had to extend the out-of-the-box generators as well.
Yep. And then as part of the creation of the solution, you can always select that the PMP controls are included, right?
Yeah,
and a few other things.
Chess and so on. Yep. And jQuery we have in there, and we also decide between jQuery version 2 and version 3, if you still need this in modern development.
Yep.
And a lot of new things coming in, so we have a pretty solid model where you can add additional stuff on top of it without writing their own generator again. So
and that's really the intention here, right? Let's rather build an open source community-driven generator together with community rather than multiple different competing ones, because that's always the better. So cool. Anything else?
The story how they started was actually I was sitting on a Friday and thought to myself, I want to create a new handlebar Yeoman project, something like that. Then I came up, okay, what have I actually done to make this generator running? And then I was looking up an old blog post of mine, and then I guess Sergey Sergeyev actually replied, hey, yeah, in this new version, this has changed. You have to register your plugins completely different now. I said, oh, good that he mentioned that on my blog post. And then I said, hey, it's nice to do it once and then a couple of months later once again, but why can't we have this somehow automated in a way so that it is beneficial for everyone without looking it up again and rethinking everything? What have I done there? So,
absolutely.
That's how it all started.
And you've been having also meetings together with engineering on basically having a discussion on how do we make your generator or the PMP generator. Technically, it's not your generator, Stefan. You're just coordinating that, but it's community generator to work properly with out-of-the-box generator. And we've been every now and then having meetings on that one with Graham and a few other engineers. So basically just making sure that we are aligned and the engineering people know what we're doing in the PMP side together with community. And if there's any feedback, we get those crossed as well, because that's super important for us as well. And coming back on why, well, obviously there's an obvious question: why isn't out-of-the-box Yeoman generator open source? And that's a kind of a difficult discussion, to be honest. We could have actually made a decision already 2 years ago that would have been the de facto ways of doing stuff. I think right now we're already we are too busy on making that switch to making that open source, because it has a relatively big process implications. Because right now we can just do modifications in our own VSTS or the DevOps, and then nobody will see them, and we don't need to worry about is it 1.8 version or 1.9 version. If it would be open source, we would have to be much more strict on the communications and what's getting checked in and the versioning and everything else. So we in engineering, sure, potentially maybe in the future that could be open source as well. If that will happen, then we'll bundle these together because it doesn't make any sense to have them separate. But I wouldn't hold my breath at this point yet.
I have a little bit more community perspective on that, an engineering perspective. So for me, at Microsoft SharePoint Generator is the core engine that actually runs all the adoptions. So you have a lot of engineering thoughts in there, a lot of dependencies that you have in there, which is really hard to open source, because actually the development that you have in there and what is in the generator and actually the artifacts that the generator generates have to be aligned with Office 365. So this core engine is pretty hard to extend and make it open source to the community. But on the other hand, the Yeoman generators actually are intended to be extended. So when someone has a generator that runs the core engine, then you should always be able to extend it and put your own things that you need to have on top of it. For example, standard generator, which is a web application generator, which does nothing else than just produce an HTML page with Sass included or Bootstrap included, and so has a testing framework in there, which comes with their own generator. So the whole thing of generators is that someone is an expert on some topic, for example, how you bundle in these testing engines, and another one, hey, I want to use this testing with this Sass generator and so on. So to have at least somehow like Lego bricks that you then plug together. And this is also what we do. So we, with the PnP SPFX generator. So we have on top of the core engine that comes from engineering, additional add-ons like the Angular elements or handlebars, Vue.js, and also how we inject the additional Gulp tasks inside the Gulp bundle.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Cool. Anything else you've been working on lately? Just out of curiosity. I know what you've been doing, but for the audience, you can't leak everything, but you can actually give some hints on what's actually coming.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing actually I did what we all already demoed at the European SharePoint conference was the PnP provisioning.
PnP provisioning service.
So I built the user interface there, and we now polish everything up, and it will be released hopefully soon. And then I'm working on some web parts that will be shown in future currently, together with another MVP with Julie Turner.
That's been a pretty interesting project, and that's going to be, well, it's at least the output or outcome of that project, what you're working with, Julie, is going to be available. Now, when it will be open source, that's a different discussion, hopefully at some point. But again, politics and legal and everything else, and it's slightly more always, there's a lot of stuff which has to be sorted out behind the scenes before we can actually start to open source in Microsoft, do many reasons as well. So, but hey, we'll get there. On my side, so just quickly recap before we go to the slide. So one of the things what we worked on last week was the updated SharePoint Framework training package. So to be fair, that was mainly done by other people. I was just coordinating the blog post and making the YouTube videos and everything else available. And then we're working on the provisioning service, making that polished and making it available. So the provisioning.sharepointpnp.com. Hopefully we'll get it out within a few weeks, and then we have plenty of templates coming on that template from Microsoft relatively soon as well. So it's pretty cool to see that finally coming together. What else have I been doing? We're working on a updated API documentation, which is an interesting, well, it's way overdue already. So the out-of-the-box CSM documentation refresh for CSM 2013, 2016, 2019, and SharePoint Online, the documentation part, so that everything is documented properly. So the API surface, and same for server-side API surface for SharePoint 2013, 2016, 2019, because we actually haven't even released those. So. But it's time consuming, so we'll get there. And plenty of other stuff as well. But anyway, so let's actually jump on the articles for this week. And there was again quite a lot of items which we can actually quickly go through. Well, not super quickly, but let's go this through as well. Tell me, Stefan, when do you actually get it? You probably got it already.
I see your screen.
Excellent. Teams is much faster on this than Skype, actually. With Skype, you always have to kind of wait and try to figure out when it's available. Anyway.
At least you don't see a loading animation.
That is true. So quickly explaining where the location is, AKMS SB Dev blog is the SharePoint Dev blog. And in here, probably the biggest thing from last week, absolutely, was the updated SharePoint Framework Developer Training package. So we've been working on this for a while, making sure that the slides and content is matching on is getting updated. And this is now, right now, it's 6 modules, which are all in the YouTube. I still need to do some modifications on the playlist and everything else. But what's really cool about this one is that, first of all, it is these 6 modules. So getting started with SharePoint Framework, building web parts, working with web part property pane, working with SharePoint content and extensions, and then leveraging Microsoft Graph and third-party APIs. So going through how do you actually access Microsoft Graph from the SharePoint Framework solutions. All of these modules have a video recorded. They have the presentation. And even better, so you can actually go to a GitHub of every single module, and you can actually see, let me dismiss that one. You can actually see the individual presentations. You can see hands-on lab. So there is a hands-on lab available for every single module, and there's even a demos available for every single module. So if you are a trainer or you want to deliver this to your development team, or you're a Microsoft certified trainer in wherever in the world, you can freely use this material in any way you want. Or if you are looking into, let's say, if you have a conference presentation related on a SharePoint framework and you need to have updated slides, feel free to use all of this. No need to reference anybody, no need to ask permissions. It's all for reuse for anybody who just need them. So really cool stuff, and we keep on evolving this material again after, well, there will be a few more modules at least. So let's see. And the one module was related on React-based development, Office UI Fabric React-based development, and one module was related on the Microsoft Teams tab development, when the Teams tabs will go GA in 1.8 release of SharePoint Framework, and a 1/3 module still, I can't remember what it was. But we keep on anyway updating material. So the videos are getting updated, the material is getting updated, hands-on labs and everything is going to get updated. So feel free to use this any way you want.
Yeah, you can directly upload it via Git, right?
Sorry?
When you clone the repo, then you can directly update it via Git.
Yes, so if you find any issues, you can absolutely, you are welcome to send a pull request or suggestions or report issues on this as well. Absolutely. So, but we keep on evolving this as part of the engineering sponsored work for the people who are working on this material. Cool. Now, the second article here, which is from the official SharePoint Dev blog, was actually an MVP article around the SharePoint Framework web part with Microsoft Graph and BMP.js step-by-step guidance. So there is a native out-of-the-box JavaScript library for Microsoft Graph, which does require you to actually know the nuances. So it's not as fluent as BMP.js, and BMP.js is the classic SharePoint Online JavaScript library, which is fluent. So you can actually do lists, .list, .getList, and items and all of that. So it has this kind of a fluent way of doing operations. So and for the Microsoft Graph, it actually has an interface as well. So if I scroll down in here, let's see if I can actually find the right location. There's the permissions, there's the usage, there's the permission requests. So that's a good example of a PMP.js usage in the context of Microsoft Graph in the context of groups. So you're able to do graph.groups.get all groups, and then get the all groups and put it in the state. So or we could loop in all of the groups and get the information around the group themselves. So it's a slightly different API than, like I said, like the JavaScript SDK for Microsoft Graph, but it's matter of a preference which one do you actually want to use. Now, this one was from Sergei Sergeyev, an article, and he's an MVP. And just a reminder for any MVPs out there, if you want to have an exposure through the SharePoint channel, so SharePoint Twitter accounts and Office Dev Twitter accounts and the blog, feel free to actually follow up on the suggestion here. We do welcome MVP articles in our SharePoint developer blog, and then we promote them to be available for other people in the community. So feel free to actually send an email on spdevblog@microsoft.com, and then somebody will come back and say, okay, and have suggestions on your article. So send us a suggestion here, and we'll have a discussion then if that article is polished enough to get released in this blog, if that makes sense. Stefan, you actually had an article released here.
Yeah, I already released, I guess it was the second article I released that was ever released there.
Yep.
And so, but a lot of people from PMP already released their things there, like Chris Kent, I guess, had one up already, and yeah.
Velin had one article.
Oh, yeah.
Warthaman had one article, and then Sergey has now one article. Yeah. So, but we absolutely welcome everybody who's an MVP. Right now, it's you have to be an MVP. Potentially, we'll open up this one in future for other people as well, but we'll see.
Yeah, but it's a great way to get more exposure on the stuff you're actually doing, because there's so many more people following the SharePoint blog at the individual blog, which is sometimes pretty hard to catch up with all the information that got out there.
Yep, absolutely. Cool. So let's then move on to other topics. So this one, we talked about this one. This is what you've been working last week, all right?
Yeah.
18th, is that was Thursday, Friday?
Yeah, it was Friday.
It doesn't matter. But PMP SPFX 1.6 generator released, better support for your development. So what's the latest thing around the generator? So what were we adding in 1.6?
So in 1.6 actually we had we completely rebuilt the add-in model that we have in there. So when you, example, want to inject gulp tasks like the Webpack bundle analyzer or style linter, which you want to use in all the generators, this is now included in this release. And what we also built in there, so especially for the React.js developers, we have now a unit testing framework in there, Jest.
Yep.
So, and everything is directly set up, so you can, after you created a new project, then you actually be able to start writing your unit tests right away. Without any additional configuration and so on.
Yeah, makes sense. And everything is obviously documented. So PMP, I'm gonna actually refresh here. PMP GitHub.io generator SPFX or AKMS SP PMP generator, if I remember correctly. Yeah. You'll land on here, and then it actually shows you how to get started and what does it actually do, what does it support, how do you install, what's included, and all of that. So. And like during our intro discussion, so it's safe to use this as the default generator because this one is using the out-of-the-box generator under the hood. So this is just decorating on top of it. So basically, if you use the PMP SPFX generator, you get the baseline plus extra, which is a good thing.
So you actually, when you start this generator, you actually see the original dialog from the Microsoft generator, because we have some questions before, and then we run the default at Microsoft generator SharePoint, and then it provisions first a default Microsoft SharePoint generator project, and when the files are actually there, then we add some additional stuff to it. So after you provision a project with this generator, you always can use the Microsoft generator and vice versa.
Yeah, you can absolutely use either one within your solution, which is a good thing to remember as well. So it's 100% aligned with the out-of-the-box generator as well. Cool. Well, obviously, if you chose to use an Angular Elements solution, you create an Angular Elements solution, then out-of-the-box generator doesn't really understand anything about the Angular solutions, right? So
yeah, because for the Angular Elements, you get an additional project which all covers all the Angular setup, so you can use your Angular CLI and all what you use in there. And in the Microsoft, in the SPFX generator, what we actually did there is just the wiring up between both projects, so you can you directly reference to the Angular project and include your Angular elements directly in the webhook, for example.
Yeah. So technically, from a out-of-the-box SPFX generated perspective, it is a no JavaScript project, right? But then BMP SPFX is decorating on top of that the additional things. Okay, got it. Which, by the way, well, anyway, let's not deep dive on these topics anyway too much. Now, moving on an article, so that's a really great stuff, and it's great to see it's getting more and more attention all the time, and usage is growing as well. So it's great to see the interest. Now, slightly different perspective. So from the deep dive technical stuff to a 3M Go engages employees and win 2 Internet Awards. And what this is really cool is around this is the end result of then building cool web parts and cool solutions. So 3M obviously is a well-known brand and well-known customer, and they basically have won 2 different Internet Awards with their 3M Go design here. So and for me at least, the number one thing of what I always do with when I say a design, I always start analyzing how would I've actually implemented this one, and this seems to be, it's most likely a real site, so it's not just a PowerPoint Photoshop picture which has been modified. So this is actually probably a real site which we're looking here, and we can clearly see the certain let's say alignments here. So as an example, this red thing here, to be honest, this has to be a DOM injection. And there's no way there is a no right side panel in the modern pages where you can actually inject using a placeholder right now, at least. So
yeah, there might be also some things done in the header or so.
Yeah, the header, fair point. The header is clean. So it might be that on top of this header, there could be a one header, but it doesn't actually, I don't know, it doesn't look like that. Or maybe this is a Photoshop picture which has been just cleaned on the header. So I don't know.
But there is always the discussion with the DOM injection that we're always discussing, because well, DOM injection for me is actually something different than for you. I mean, what you see actually in the header could be done via CSS.
Absolutely, it could be a CSS injection in this case. So absolutely, you might be hiding some elements there.
Yeah.
But to be able to do that CSS injection, you would actually need to use DOM injection to get your CSS included in the page execution pipeline, right?
True. Yeah. Or at least to have it in an application customizer or something.
Yes, like that. Exactly. So sure, and obviously these things are absolutely debatable. We're having a chat with Stefan on this one when we are scanning through the pages. So technically, if a customer has a requirement of making certain things like the red bar here visible, is the real answer then, sorry, if SharePoint is not your right platform, if it would match all of the other scenarios, what are the business requirements? Or can we, can we do a DOM injection? Absolutely, we can. The question is, as long as you understand that you're using DOM injection, and then you understand that you might be causing challenges for the portal. So you need to be aware if there's any DOM-based structural changes, and then you're able to fix them. I think, Stefan, you said it really well, that as long as everything is documented, so the decision behind, the decision behind of the implementation is documented, then I think it's fine. It's a fair game. We made this decision knowingly that this has an impact on the following things, but the UI layouts were too important to ignore that or whatever. So
I mean, the proper documentation has 2 benefits in this case. So for example, when you do style customizations to this and have something like a style guide set up for your project, then you have all the style sheet classes that you actually used in there documented in some way. And just in case someone changes something in the look and feel of how SharePoint behaves and how SharePoint looks, and then your customizations actually are broken, it's way faster to identify the problem where it actually has been or where it was. So from my point, and this is nothing new here from the classical or modern experience, it always matters how do you document the changes. Back in the classic, you had to document the changes in the master page. Now you have all the document checks
yes.
that you do in there.
And that's an interesting discussion. Sorry for jumping there, Stefan, because clearly, obviously, in a classic, you would have actually created a custom master page, right?
Yeah.
And then the impact of the custom master page would have been that especially in these scenarios, because the DOM injection, this looks pretty already hectic modifying. You were forced to do a custom master page basically, but then whenever we released the new capabilities, you were not necessarily getting them because your master page were not getting updated with the new capabilities. Sure. So, and again, if you knew that was the case, I think it was fine. It's a fair game. That was, again, a knowingly decision that you actually took that decision, and do you understand the impact of the decision? Same applies here, except you cannot do a custom master page in the modern experiences. That is not supported. It's not possible, and it never will be possible, to be fair.
But in any way, it's always like some hide and seek game, and the customer should at least be aware of it when you do.
Correct.
He really insists that he wants to have exactly that feature. So it can be that some things will change in future and some things might be broken. So
Yep, absolutely. Now, other than that, we can see there's features news. That could be an out-of-the-box news. Web part, well, it has some designs, so maybe not. Upcoming events, that looks like an out-of-the-box events or pretty close. Company news, that could be out-of-the-box news. Personalized news, I don't think we have a personalized news out of the box. Yeah, so that has to be basically a custom thing based on, for example, the company I'm part of or whatever the user profile entry it would be. Popular 3M sites to go, quite typical layout. That theoretically could be pretty close. We could actually get out of the box with a quick links web part, but the rendering style is slightly different. So most likely this is a custom web part as well. This is such a typical thing as well. So my Delft profile. So people are promoting other the employees to fill in their skills and their presence and their accuracies and everything else on the user profile. And that's why the my Delft profile or my profile progress is always visible in the welcome page. Get to know 3M Go. Basically this is how the system works, and then they clearly have a custom footer here as well, which clearly is something custom as well, because if it's in the in the content, we do not support placeholders in the content yet. It is absolutely being developed. It's coming, but when, that's a separate discussion. But that seems to be a content footer, so with some links and the stock information. Cool. Moving on things. So cool web part from 3M, and it's great to actually, just to pinpoint this, great to see actual pictures, because these pictures, I think they are really making then ideas. Oh, that's an interesting idea. I want to take that one. I want to put that one in my intranet as well. So that's always super beneficial. Now, the next things are basically a pair of, let's not actually stop sharing, pair of things. So Andy actually came up with this TweetDeck SPFX filter. And this is basically a filter for TweetDeck. So you can see SPFX, so SharePoint framework related content in the SPFX hashtag. Why is that important? If we have a quick look on the SPFX hashtag, we can see that it's basically there's the automatic. I can't remember who's actually doing this, but there's the SP web part automatic. Then there's SPFX web part content, but then we have a lot of actually SharePoint. The super
special effects.
Special effects. Thank you. Special effects and stuff here as well. So especially at the Hollywood. Come on, Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Halloween, thank you. My brain is frozen. Halloween time frame, the feed was looking pretty weird because it was around custom web parts and then a freak or a freak show or whatever. Now it's actually settled down again slightly, but because the maturity is SPFX, but still some of it is makeup. So it's interesting. But basically what Andy and then Sebastian create a video. Andy is providing the filter and Sebastian made a video how to actually use that. Is filtering that feed in the tweet deck. So getting rid of all of the makeup stuff if you're not interested on that. I think you got some followers from the makeup world, right?
Yeah, on Instagram, because I did a new, I posted, I have some SharePoint and Office 365 followers on Instagram, so I thought, yeah, let's try out this new channel, and I posted, I guess, a Yeoman generator picture up there with hashtag SPFX, and then a makeup studio actually in Austria started to following me.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Okay.
So,
Really funny.
Yeah, cool. Moving on items. So from Joel, SPFX Workbench Customizer, talking about DOM injections, right? Because this one really is around the fact that our online Workbench hasn't really been evolving that much. So it's actually quite behind of the actual modern pages experience, which is a fair point. It's on us to actually fix that. But what Joel is doing here, he's adding a small web part, which is then modifying that page to match more on the native modern page experience. So, for example, increases the width and all of that stuff. So, interesting perspective, and it is DOM injection or style injection, whatever you want to call this, but still. So you can do that, and if you find this useful, then have a look on what's available from Joe.
Yeah, it's nice to have it in there. I mean, there's one thing. The local Workbench actually has some limitations, like this one, like the design doesn't match what you have in a SharePoint page, and you always can go to SharePoint and Office 365 to test everything there. But the experience is not that good either, because you always have to submit when you reload the page. Yeah. So it's a great addition. And one thing actually, what you actually cannot do in the local Workbench is to test it for responsive.
Yeah.
Because then you see a pop-up there. I definitely will check this out, because it seems a great way to actually mimic what you have in SharePoint Online, with the benefit that you automatically refresh everything whenever you save your TypeScript files.
Yep, absolutely. Now, the next one was interesting as well. So I think the story around this one, if I remember correctly, was around, hey, I built this a while back, but then I realized why not actually share this. So this is actually a nice system tray tool for Windows, if you're interested on this, which you can actually use then to configure what kind of tenants you actually are working with. So I work with multiple or tens and tens of tenants, and then you can actually configure these links available. And then, because it's a system tray application, you can just select stuff then from the system tray and choose on which browser you wanted to open it up and all of that, and then poof, it opens stuff. So open source, nice small tool, basically opening URLs in the specific defined browser. So if you want to go to OneDrive, you can say that OneDrive in Firefox, boom, in that tenant, and let's open it up from the tenant. So quite nice, simple tool, and it's open source available from here as well. So it's why not if you're interested on that kind of setup. It's tempting. I do use Chrome right now for me to do the same thing. I've been in between of moving to Firefox and Firefox profiles for a long time, but it always takes time to flip the profiles and the browser. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I also tested out Firefox profiles, pretty good, but I haven't migrated yet now from Chrome.
Yeah, the Firefox profiles is a newer one than the Chrome profiles, and so I've never had a time to actually move.
Yeah, I guess they run some sort of container or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was the difference. Now, next thing, so this one was from, I need to actually locate here, Christoforov. Okay. Build simple heat map mouse tracker from SharePoint Online. So this one was interesting. This actually caused a lot of discussion in Twitter because it's around using a Smart Look service. So Smart Look has a free account option. So you can basically set up a free account and do a website, get a tracking code for the website. And then he's showing where to actually put the tracking code or the script in the in application customizer. and then enable that. And what you actually get is then actual mouse tracking from your website, or from your portal. So you're able to actually use then this kind of a tracking tool to understand what are your end users actually clicking through in the welcome page, which is quite often actually an interesting question. I think the other one was slightly different layout. So how the mouse actually moves on the page and where are people actually going. Really interesting, actually.
These are real tracked mouse clicks, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. Because there's also other services I used previously in the past, which is FangGUI, I guess it's the name of it, where you can actually upload a picture of the heat maps of a SharePoint screenshot, for example, and then it does the suggestion where the heat maps are and where the most important spots are.
Okay, cool. So this one is live. It's basically tracking live on where the mouse is moving against your welcome page or the page where you're using that. And if you're designing let's say a global portal, I think this is super important to understand where is your end users clicking through and what are the links which they actually use the most. So maybe not in a team site, but in a portal design, absolutely.
Yeah, especially when you do, let's say, integration tests or end user tests from portal, this makes absolute sense to have it.
Yep.
But I wouldn't use it actually in my productive tenant.
Well, not necessarily in a production tenant because they're increasing the base payload as well. So sure.
Exactly, sure. And you don't know what information you actually access.
That is correct as well. So please be careful on what services you're actually using and what's the terms of usage on the service. That's a fair point, actually, because clearly you're basically running the JavaScript in the context of the browser with the permissions of the users. So you want to understand what the script is actually doing. Now, a few more quick ones. So here, SharePoint site provisioning Office 365. So this one was from Provision Point, guys. And this is around what are the different site provisioning options. So PMP provisioning templates. So we're looking into, for example, the PMP provisioning templates. The tenant templates are now released, and tenant templates will be evolved relatively soon to include, for example, provisioning of teams, channels, and teams, and all of that stuff as well. So that's pretty cool. So it's not just about SharePoint. SharePoint site designs are then in the UI, let's say, end-user driven selection of a template, what is actually getting created quite often, more often, and then a custom CSM code and then tying everything together. So nice blog post on the different options from here, from Peter. Two more quickly, well, not quickly, but Jonas had a nice blog post related on different modern page layouts and changed them from the page itself. Relatively simple operation. So he's basically adding a placeholder on the top placeholder and adding a button there, and clicking that one you can then select are you going to want to use homepage, article page, or single web part page. So single web part app page. So then you're able to flip between the options from the placeholder. So quite nice. Cool setup, simple setup. Not necessarily, again, a production thing, but at least it shows the code of flipping between the layouts and how you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, when you, for example, provision a web part, maybe then it is useful to use this code, right?
True. Or, yeah. Well, the location where this is, I would say this is the most useful is the classic scenario on I have a classic theme site in the root of my tenant. I want to put I want to make my root of site of the tenant look like a communication site. And sure, it wouldn't be end user driven click around the button, but you would be most likely flipping the homepage layout, which will then mean that you get rid of the left navigation, which will then mean that you have communication site look and feel in the root of your tenant, even though it was originally a classic theme site. So, but it's good to understand the options. And basically, this isn't doing anything more than updating a one column or the page item in a site pages list. So relatively simple thing. And the last thing here, more kind of a solution design, so more architectural design, because I think if you think about SharePoint Dev and SharePoint designs and SharePoint experiences and extensibility, it's really around understanding also the out-of-the-box capabilities, like what is the records management story and how you could then potentially even extend the records management story if needed. This is from John Klein around the modern versus classic in-place records management. And I think records management was something which were introduced in 2013. I don't think it was in 2010.
No,
maybe it was in 2007. 2007, yes, it was. You're absolutely correct. Yes, you're absolutely correct. The classic records management was introduced in 2007. You are absolutely correct on that. And that was and then at some point we changed that to be an in-place records management, because first it was the fact that we would route the articles to a single site collection as a record, and then we introduced the in-place probably in 2010, unless I'm completely
mistaken. Yeah, I guess 2010, yeah.
Yeah. And then this one is basically going through the different options around the classic records management, and then the modern way where we're using retention labels. And then there are certain rules behind of the retention labels. So you can as an example, let me scroll down where we actually explain this. So there are certain, let's say, differences related on when can you modify the document metadata. When it's a record in classic depends, in modern yes, or can you modify the document's content in classic depends, modern no. So basically different options based on the chosen path in your records management story. But again, more maybe a solution design, more infrastructure or architectural design discussion than a real dev discussion as such. But again, what's dev, what's extensibility, what's solution design? It all mixes so well in the SharePoint area. Cool. I think it's time to actually flip back on the screen and a few questions, and then we can actually close up.
Famous last words.
Famous last words. So I saw a picture, Stefan, from you where I think it was the 10-year challenge where you were without a beard. That was pretty interesting. Nobody would recognize you.
Yeah, I know. Actually, it's the beard is grown because I had a surgery in, I guess it was in April last year.
Yeah.
So I had to shave off my beard before the surgery, so now it's grown till April.
Yeah.
And I pretty much documented everything without beard and the growing back on Facebook, I guess.
Yeah.
But a lot of people actually haven't followed the stories there, but I guess most of the people actually saw me the first time without a beard. And
yeah, exactly.
Before I had the beard that long, actually the story is that I had only, I was let it grow for 2 weeks. So I mostly had on my profile pictures me with a beard. Then I was at the I guess it was a SharePoint conference. I thought to myself, no, before the SharePoint conference, I shaved myself.
Yeah.
So nobody recognized me there as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I can imagine that.
So I'll leave it like that now.
Cool. What about this week? So what's burning on your topics related on the work and the community work? So
the community work actually, during the weekend I got a request by Mark Anderson if it is possible to add, for example, chest testing framework and Webpack Analyzer on existing projects, which is absolutely an option to look into. What do I actually need to accomplish this? So you basically say, just put me these add-ons on the Microsoft Generator framework project that I already have.
Yeah.
Because it's already tested and this actually matches the same thing. Documentation would make absolutely sense.
Yeah.
Then I do again, develop a little bit on web part, and what I actually do there, or what I started, I guess 2 weeks ago, bring 3D to SharePoint using JS.
Yeah. You should actually do the now I'm kind of
Babylon JS.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Yeah, so I know now the reason why spaces might be on Babylon JS, because the TypeScript support is there pretty good. Yeah. Makes sense. But
so and let me reiterate on that one. So the SharePoint Spaces is using Babylon JS as the engine for drawing the 3D parts, and that's one of the things what we so we introduced the Spaces in SBCNA last year, right? I think it was May.
Yeah, May last year.
Yeah, and then we previewed some of the stuff in the Ignite and Babylon JS. So the Spaces is 3D experiences in context of SharePoint. You don't actually have to have any virtual reality masks or anything, because it's Babylon.js. You can technically just render the web parts in the pages as such. They will be 3D render, and if needed, you can always put on your mask as well. So it's a pretty cool setup actually. Let's see when do we actually get to public preview and public GA with the spaces. So I have no insights on that. But
actually, what I found on the Babylon.js website, because when you have Adobe Creative Suite, because normally, you know, the Adobe from Photoshop, Illustrator, and stuff like that, they also have it's called Adobe Dimensions, where you can directly export stuff, 3D models, to Babylon.js in future. So that's currently working on, and it's more like Photoshop 3D in the future. So
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
And a lot of companies now go 3D, and it makes a lot of sense, because in companies actually that, for example, manufacturing, automotive industry, and so they already live for such a long time now in the 3D world. A friend of mine is working for a company. They actually do pistons, and they don't draw any 3D mechanical sketches anymore. They all do everything in 3D, and it's, I guess, when you have spaces, it's nice to have them visualized for many more people, like project manager. Hey, I want to see how this piston looks like, and then I can directly show it in SharePoint as well.
So technically, at some point, you would be able to then you draw your stuff in 3D in Adobe, whatever, Adobe Illustrator and whatever tools they're using. I don't know. Dimensions, yes. And then basically you do save as Babylon.js, and then poof, you can put it in the SharePoint, and that renders in SharePoint. That's actually pretty cool, because then you don't actually need to have the license for the dimensions to actually have a look on the designs, and you're able to expose that for the end users, and they can scroll the stuff. And that makes a lot of sense, actually. A lot of sense. Cool. So what else are you? So you were doing 3D tests, but what about work related? So you're working on the new template stuff, or the template web parts, which you are coming at some point, right?
Yeah.
As long as I will get the provisioning service out. So.
Yeah, sure. No, another work-related stuff. Actually, out of the SharePoint space, we started a redesign of a website, which I'm there for the UI UX part, which is completely outside of SharePoint. Yeah. So it's nice to be in the web world for some time and mix it together with Office 365, because it makes you so much opener, and you get so many inspirations from other people when you go outside of the SharePoint world.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
As well.
Because so with the SharePoint world and Office 365, it's a one way of thinking, and sure, then there's multiple other ways of thinking behind with other services. So is it SiteScore, or is it Wix, or whatever these services are? It actually makes a lot of sense to understand what's possible with them as well, because then you will get out of good ideas from them, and like, hey, what if we would actually take that one and implement that one using it here? Sure. So that's a good point. That's a good point. And for me, actually, for this week, I think the number one thing is to get the provisioning service, the text and everything else on the right level. We're closing into the getting to a public beta. It's now a private beta and limited beta still, and we'll open it to a public beta quite soon. A lot of texts which we need to be updated, and templates which need to be fixed as well, but we'll get there. But I think that's it. Relatively long chat again. We just can't do this in 30 minutes. Just impossible. But I think it's a good discussion. So thank you, Stefan. And Waldek, get well soon if you're watching this. But thank you, Stefan. I will absolutely invite you here. Within a year, most likely. We want to have new people, obviously, every single week. But sooner or later, we'll run out of people. So we'll invite you back to have a discussion on what has happened within the past time.
Thank you very much.
Here. But thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Stefan, for being here. And we'll come up with a new SharePoint Dev Weekly again within a week. Thanks. Cheers. Bye-bye.